Everybody. Good evening. It's Thursday once again. That's right. It's every day once again. It's the 17th of April. It's Holy Thursday. And the year is 2025, so I'm happy to be here with you tonight. It's a miraculous event. It's always miraculous to get behind the microphone in your own little capacity. Whereas 100 years ago, not only was it a new technology, but very hard to break into. But here we are tonight. Here we are tonight, making our own rules. And I'm very happy to once again be syndicated on Badlands Media with all of our good friends over there. From the top on down, I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you so much for being here. It's going to be a good night. Our guest for the evening is Matt Roeske of Cultivate, Elevate. You've probably seen him all over the place. We're going to talk about what we're going to be talking about a lot of the different things that he covers throughout the week. But we're going to be starting off with, well, I'll get to it. It's going to be a little bit more cloning, a little bit more interesting stuff. You know how I like to do on Thursdays. Deep dives, of course, it'll make it relevant to the current age, the current day. But we've got to be able to give our minds a little bit of an exercise. Is it all real? Is it all bullshit? Is there a little bit of both mixed together? Oh, well, there you have it. I'd like to hear your thoughtful responses afterwards in the comments and the chats, the emails. Also, at around 8:35 p.m., we're going to have a special little segment, correspondent segment, with Jim Lee, climateviewer.com. He's going to be calling in because there was some pretty interesting geoengineering legislation, I think, in Florida that he wants to talk about real quick. And then also, I want to ask his opinion on not only the 4chan hack, but there seems to be, I don't know, I saw this headline about Russia's chilling doomsday radio station, The Buzzer, wakes up and sends 4 cryptic messages in 24 hours. Jim Lee was the first one to come on this show years ago to talk about and really fill in the importance of the Russian, the woodpecker. To talk about the woodpecker and how all of those radar systems really had an untold hand in what happened at Chernobyl. At least that's what the theory says. Anyway, Jim Lee is going to be stopping in for a micro segment in the second half because we're going to be doing a lot of stuff with Matt Roeske tonight. Cultivate, Elevate. Before we go anywhere, I want to give a shout out to Badlands and this great American restoration tour that they continue to put on all throughout the Union. And this one is in Plymouth, Massachusetts, May 1st through 4th, 2025. Featured speakers: John Harold, Chris Paul, Burning Bright, Zach Payne, G Money, Jordan Sather, Can Con, Matt Errett, Alpha Warrior, Ashen America, and Ghost of Based Patrick Henry. That's all badlandsmedia.tv/events. There you go. Get to Plymouth, Massachusetts, ladies and gentlemen, and watch out for that New England serial killer that is on there. They're not going to come anywhere near the Guard event. It's not going to happen. You go there having a good time. Forget about the serial killer in Rhode Island and Massachusetts and parts of Connecticut. Forget about it. It's not happening. It's not going to touch you. There's too many patriots there. That's like garlic to a vampire. Okay, shenanigans. Patriots and shenanigans. Okay, so that's what we have there. And away we go. Let's get this thing kicked off because Matt Roeske is going to be here in a few weeks. He'll be here in a few weeks, and of course the show will start after that. So I'll see you in June. Take care and good night.
Hey, there he is. Hey, Jesus.
Hey guys, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, man. No Jump on in, the water's fine.
I've been teaching the disciples all week. It's nice to actually take a break and have a little fun.
Yeah.
Cannonball!
What?
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay?
Tonight, actually, when I get home, there's a draft of the new intro video that's being sent to me. And I got to tell you guys, I've been having some problems with Spotify. Spotify has been systematically taking down a lot of my episodes because of the intro video, the intro music, the intermission music, and little, hits of music that comes. I don't play full songs, but little hits of things. So it's either I have to just start editing the podcasts and making sure that the official intros and intermissions are not in there anymore, or because Spotify is a big part of the podcast game, like the on-demand audio game. This is not a podcast, obviously, but just made me wonder, just made me think about just the music that we're using and whether or not I can get Anthony to make something for the show that is totally our own. I can't get around the intermission video, though. The intermission is just, it's too much. I love it. Anyway, that's questions that need to be answered at some other time. And, necessity is the mother of invention. So let's get into this. I have a little something for you over here, ladies and gents. Where the hell is it? What have I done? Okay, here we go. So as you know, we've been flirting with the transhumanist topic lately on account of all the headlines that have been cropping up around the resurrecting of extinct species, and at the same time, what seems to be the managed decline of our own species into sterility. I mean, just last night with Timothy Alberino on the show, he and I were discussing what could be a need in the future for mechanized, artificial, and, of course, centrally regulated childbearing in the event that we are rendered unable to procreate naturally anymore. Well, tonight, I wanted to kick off tonight's guest appearance with a talk about one of the earlier mass cloning theories out there. And do you know anything about the origin story of Cabbage Patch Kids? I'm sure some of you do. There's plenty of schizos out there in this audience, and that's why we love you all. Well, here's a little bit I'll give you. This is such a bizarre story, and I took this right off of one of my favorite old Reddit threads on the subject that we had touched on years ago. But here it is. This is a bizarre topic and has me baffled since learning of it. There was something called repopulation cards, postcards, in France, which depicted very odd things like babies growing in cabbage patches. There were a ton of different versions of these postcards that depicted babies in all sorts of very odd settings. This is an example of these. And I found this area, the 4 of them right here, but you can find so many of these out there. In the early 1900s, a strange trend emerged in the form of postcards depicting surreal and unsettling scenes involving babies. These postcards, often referred to as repopulation cards or Cabbage Patch postcards, are a curious blend of early photo manipulation and bizarre imagery. So it's like first generation photoshopping, where you're making compositions just by putting things on top of each other and all that. They show babies being grown in cabbage patches, harvested from plants, hatched from eggs, or even transported on trains and boats. But what could these images possibly mean, and why were they so prevalent? The postcards were very early examples of photocompositing, a technique that combined multiple images to create surreal and often unsettling visuals. Although information on these postcards is scarce, it's clear that they were designed to play tricks on the viewer's minds. In a time before Photoshop, these postcards were crafted with meticulous care, blending the real and the imagined to create a sense of wonder and confusion. One theory suggested that these postcards were part of a broader narrative hinting at the idea of mass reproduction or even cloning. The imagery is striking: babies sprouting from plants, being pulled from the water, or delivered by storks. The postcards seem to present a fantastical world where babies are grown and harvested like crops, a concept that aligns with the legend of the Cabbage Patch Kids, where babies were supposedly found in cabbage patches and delivered by a stork. But there's a darker side to these images. Some researchers have connected the postcards to themes of orphan trains, baby farms, and the mysterious rise in orphan populations during the 1800s. Could these postcards be hinting at something more sinister, a hidden history of mass-produced children, or even early attempts at human cloning? Now, by the way, this is me, not the post from Reddit. The storybook form of the Cabbage Patch Kids involves a stork and all that stuff, but it also involves a witch who wants to prevent the children from finding parents because she needs them to use their little fingers to mine this valley that they all live in for gold. It was filled with gold, and the children are the only one that could effectively remove the gold from the valley. Back to the article. The symbolism in these postcards is also worth noting. Storks, the traditional symbol of birth, appear frequently, as do images of nurses pulling babies from the water, perhaps representing medical interventions or artificial reproduction. The Cabbage Patch Kids, originally a simple cloth doll concept, was later rebranded with an elaborate story involving a mystical fairy and an evil witch. Both symbols that may hint at deeper cultural anxieties about fertility, childbirth, and the manipulation of life. Have you ever had a Cabbage Patch Kid? I have. Matt Roski founded Cultivate Elevate to promote the rediscovery of superfoods and herbs whose seemingly magical properties had been used for medicine for centuries past, but his work doesn't stop there, as you may know, because Cultivate Elevate has become a favorite source of hundreds of thousands of people on various very cozy fringe theory topics that invite the viewer to question the very structure of reality itself, whether it be hidden history, secret cures, electroculture, and the latent powers of the earth, and much more. He's making another appearance tonight on Quite Frankly. Matt, welcome back. It's good to see you.
What's going on? It's been a while.
Oh,
happy
man.
birthday too, by the way. Happy belated birthday.
Well, thank you so much. I know you showed up in my Instagram comments there, and you said, "Oh, it makes sense now. You're an Aries."
That's the Ram. That's why I got Aries in my sign. I'm a Capricorn, and then I have Aries moon, so I understand.
Wow.
You Ram people. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The other thing there too is one of the other tendencies I've had to work against in the years that I've learned a little bit about my archetype there is finishing what I start. I think I've been doing a pretty good job, starting a lot of things, but how do you leave them off? So tying knots is my specialty now. How's everything been on your end of things? I'm sure you are well into the middle of summer now out there in Arizona.
You would laugh. It was 67 degrees today.
Oh.
So they're messing around. It was 100 a couple days back. And then now it's back to somehow chilly and some nonsense that we're facing. So,
Jeez.
Yeah, we've been just kind of going up and down. That's the best way to describe the weather in Arizona lately. And it's very, doesn't feel the same, that's for sure. It gets really hot and then it gets really cold.
Well, that's how it's been for us. Today was actually pretty nice in the sun, in the 60s. So I guess we're Arizona weather today over here in southeastern New York. But then also yesterday was so cold with the wind that it's the kind of cold that creeps into your ear canal and stirs your brain up. I hated it. So I guess we're going to be out of the woods maybe in a few weeks, but who knows?
Yeah, they love messing around with the weather. That's for sure. I watched 250 airplanes come out. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, and it showed a little cloudy icon on Google. And then I realized, oh, okay, so that's going to drop 10 to 15 degrees. And then it dropped 10 to 15 degrees.
Like clockwork.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, clockwork. It's mechanical. It's only going to go one way. Let's start because we're going to get into all types of stuff tonight. But since I already led off with the material that I set up for you, let's do a little bit on this. Lately, we've had de-extinction and dire wolves in the in the news. We've had CRISPR babies being made in China since 2018. I remember in March, as I brought up with a couple of guests that were on recently, we had MIT talking about how it would be a really good idea to start producing brainless human bodies that could be used for organ harvesting and all. This is from MIT. It's not some blog on Mother Jones or something like that. But genetic experimentation, cloning mysteries in the Gilded Age is not as easy a leap for people to make because, of course, it seems like anything before FDR seems like the Bronze Age, and yet not only is there a rich historical record of technological breakthroughs in the 19th century, because you cover it a lot, we also have the root of some of our first big cloning conspiracies that I've heard of, and you've talked about it a little bit when we did touched a little bit on the orphan trains. So, but as far as the story of Cabbage Patch Kids, what do you know?
So the Cabbage Patch Kids one is a very interesting one. You find all these old school postcards that have all these cabbages and you have little babies on top of them. And what's interesting is during that time, they're shipping babies around with USPS, which is really strange. You can pull it up. It says 1910 or 1912, whatever. They're shipping babies with USPS. So things are really weird with that. Now, the other thing, too, is people almost look like they're going to pick children during the Cabbage Patch thing. It's almost like they're advertising these children as if you can buy them and you can pick them up and sell them. And it's like a marketplace for children. So it gets really strange. And, people who are wandering around at this time, it's almost like they're taking in these kids. And what was weird with me when I was getting into the whole Cabbage Patch thing was I was wondering, where are all these kids coming from? Now, this does follow the 1893 World's Fair. It follows right around that time. So it's almost like all these kids appear. Now, was there some sort of catastrophe? Was there a money panic or some sort of thing that happened and then people gave up their kids and decided to sell them? That I did think about. But then the other thing, too, is the more I would dive into cloning, the harder it would be to find anything of actual clones. And so when I was going through all of this and seeing this, the only thing I could find is they talked about using like a surrogate. And there's these weird pictures with the Cabbage Patch babies where there's like this, it's almost like a surrogate mother with like eggs all over her. And I remember seeing that photo and thinking, well, that would be something interesting. Almost like, the stories we heard, like the mother in the shoe or something. And then they got all the kids and whatever else. So when I looked at all of those things, there's something that's maybe missing that we just don't know. Now, a lot of people, which gets really weird, when you see like celebrities of 2025, they look like they look like people of the past. And they showed this even with Alex Jones. It was like a new Alex Jones and then the old Alex Jones.
Nicolas Cage. There's quite a few Nicolas Cage doppelgangers.
Yes. So all of these different people, they look like they have clones. So it makes you wonder. But what I did find, which was interesting with the cloning, was when a egg is at a certain point, it can be split and then it can produce a twin. And so then I started thinking, well, we think of clones because that's what we're taught, like the whole thing what they talk about. But then I started to think about, what about twins? What about when you have triplets or something like that? And that was the only information I could find on potential cloning and that the people are being cloned or whatever it is and then multiplying XYZ out. But I couldn't find much because when I started going into the DNA and the genes and that whole thing, because that's the PCR test, then nothing added up. So, it's one that we should ask questions about of why children are on display at a marketplace, like almost for sale for people. And then at these world fairs, they're on display too. Like nobody puts children on display to show them unless it's a marketplace for something like that. Yeah.
And that was one of the downsides of the orphan trains there too. They were a little bit dehumanizing. Then again, a lot of things were going on. For example, you just brought up 1893. Now, I don't know if this could just be creative license, but it's also it's very interesting subject matter. Have you ever seen the movie The Prestige? I brought it up on my show last week. Actually, you ever see that?
I think maybe.
It has Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, Michael Caine, but David Bowie plays Nikola Tesla in this. You should really watch it. So you have these two dueling magicians who set up shop in London, and they're always looking for an edge on the other person. They want to completely take the other person's career out. It gets, the tension between them heighten. The stakes get higher and higher throughout the whole thing. It's wonderfully done. It's a Christopher Nolan film. And it turns out that one of the secrets, the biggest secret to their ultimate successes as an act, came from a little place in Colorado Springs that Tesla was working at. And you go in there, and there's this great cameo from Andy Serkis and all that stuff, and you see the light bulbs just sitting there in the earth, lighting up. They're not connected to any of the wires, whatever. But cloning is a big part of this, in the way that there's nothing really going on in a biological sense, in a laboratory sense, but from a machine-like sense. What we see from the 1893, the depictions of him with all, these big power producing mechanisms out there, that one of Tesla's machines was actually making photocopies of people. And it had very little to do with, somebody being hatched in a tube or incubated somewhere and things like that. It was almost like flash of a photograph, and boom, there is an exact copy of you. And I always thought that was interesting because, again, here we are. We're talking about late 19th century. We're talking about a time that most people don't really know anything about. But it was a time of incredible growth in this country, not only economically, but we still had stable money, and high technology was really being introduced at a rapid clip. And then a lot of things just started getting paused by wars and everything else, of course, in the early 20th. But just wonder what you thought about that. A little bit more of a Tesla aspect to this whole thing.
So that relates to a couple podcasts back. We talked about the Ebner effect. And that was where the scientists were taking fish and frogs and different types of crops, putting them in fields, and they made giants, basically. They made gigantic fish, they made gigantic corn, they made gigantic crops. And these crops, they didn't even know what they were. They were like, that's not corn, it doesn't look like it. Same with the fish. And what they were doing was they were manipulating the static fields. So if that, like you just said with his technology, I could totally see this. And the only reason I say this is because the more I got into Tesla's work, the farther I got into cold electricity. So we have hot electricity right now. Everything that is around you, it heats everything up. And when Nikola Tesla discovered cold electricity, which is what you were talking about, the globes, they're all lit up on the ground and all the lights are turned on, and he could send the electricity to anybody and not use this inefficient power lines and all this other garbage that we have, he was defunded. JP Morgan then burned down his lab and things would vanish. So like you said, there was a lot of technology that used to exist, and I don't put it past me. At this point, I have seen so many things that I honestly have been mind blown. I mean, I've seen engines that don't even make sense in the 1800s that are, 1,000 feet tall, and sitting there going, where is this? Nobody uses this. And all of these world fairs, like we were just talking about, they were showing people technology, and that could be there, right? Showing that they can clone or have orphans, whatever it may be. And then the people would never get this technology. But, Hershey's and Coca-Cola and Tiffany and Co. definitely got customers for life. Because that's when the beginning of those three companies came in 1893. Because all the Masons and Oddfellows and all those other different societies held those world fairs to put things on display and then to destroy them afterwards.
Interesting stuff. And I there's more things here. By the way, somebody just accused me of ruining the plot of The Prestige, a movie that came out over 20 years ago. First of all, I didn't even ruin anything. To say that Tesla is involved, watch the movie. Ridiculous. But still, Matt, I keep reminding myself that every good conspiracy, and I'm not using that word as a pejorative, I'm saying an actual conspiratorial operation, is mixed with obfuscating elements that are both lies and also obfuscating truths. So when it comes to the orphan trains of the early 20th century, those obviously were no secret. Unfortunately, many children were just surrendered this way, and during the Dust Bowls, the Depression, families gave children, even sold them directly. So I know that stuff was going on. Then, of course, you have Martin Cooney is the guy who invented the incubators that had trouble. He had a lot of trouble convincing modern medicine at the time that they worked, and these showrooms that were placed in Coney Island and Atlantic City and even at the World's Fairs, they were a legitimate way of publicly proving that they were viable medical utilities there, even though they reduced the whole thing to a sort of circus attraction. It's kind of like weird at the same time. But where do the theories for you, where do the theories about great human population resets start to make more sense outside of things that are verifiable, just truths that have no real huge, conspiracy behind them? It's just things that happened.
Well, I mean, if you look at certain towns and you look at the populations of those towns, and then you see that at one time, let's say there's 1,000 people, and then all of a sudden there's 50,000 people, and then all of a sudden there's 100,000 people, and it's just a small town, and it's out. There's no train tracks, there's no access, there's no nothing. That you have to start to wonder where all those people were coming from. And we always call America the melting pot. The new world. We've called it the new world. That's why they say New World Order. Because the old order is gone and the new world is here. And as America was destroyed multiple times over, the buildings were destroyed, the towns were destroyed, and things were reset over and over again, you had a repopulation tactic that took place. And that's where you start to see where, you get into immigration and that whole thing too. We see the same thing we hear today where we don't want the immigration and whatever. That's the same thing you hear back then in 1893. So you have to sit there and wonder, okay, well, if you weren't for immigration at that time, why is the population just going through the roof? And that's where, these are just questions. And that's why I like to question everything. But when I look at numbers of certain things, a lot of things don't add up. And then also, if you need manpower to build infrastructure and all of these things that they're allegedly doing back then, you need a lot of people. You wouldn't have a population of, let's say, 1,000 people to build these big buildings and all use this stone and all these materials. So, when I looked at all of these things and I started going farther back and I got to all the way back to 1776 and the whole situation then and before that, a lot of it doesn't make any sense, So, and that's why, I just always say, go back and look at that and kind of see things and kind of just question yourself. Because I was watching old footage from the 1920s of just Europe, for example. The buildings are absolutely massive in comparison to the people. And you have to sit there and wonder who built that then. Because they look like little ants, not even they look like little beetles compared to these massive buildings. And North Korea too. They have all these tourists going to North Korea lately. And I thought this was really interesting. If you look at those old world buildings, they are all there. And it's all what used to be in America and Europe and many other places before they destroyed it.
Yeah, and as you said before, there's those peripheral theories about whether or not why this may be an explanation why there are so many stories about doppelgangers. How many of us are descendant from some sort of an old facsimile, or who the hell knows, some counterfeit. It's fun to think about because it's stranger things have happened, and I think that things are getting stranger the more we press on to this. And going into a little bit more of the modern age, it's hard to consider something like that back, like I said, in the 19th century, because you tend to think of anything that happened before the mid 20th century as ancient, backwater, wrong on every account, not understanding the natural world in any way, shape, or form, that we're so much more evolved right now. But then you have things like that Raelian cult. You ever look into the Raelian alien worshiping religion? They claimed, I forget when the hell it was, that they had cloned a baby using Clonade. And they called the baby Eve, but there was no, symbolically called the baby Eve, but there was obviously no real follow-up on that one. But still, from that to the dire wolves and the talk of woolly mammoths and all that other stuff, where are you today? If you believe that something like this was possible, that some timeline could be shifted, because the way that some people describe population resets almost sounds like a sort of a rapture, where all of a sudden people are left behind, or something is just almost like photocopied in one instance, and there is a split in a, I don't know what the hell to even describe it as, but if things were possible like that 100, 200 years ago, where do you think the limits are today?
Well, this depends, because then we have to say that that was possible. It's kind of like when they told us germs can make us ill, but that was all a lie. So then if you feed that lie, you can continue that lie for a long period of time. So it depends. Like I said, if there was a piece of technology, you could potentially make a whole army if you wanted. But what was weird too was when I was looking into the cloning as well, all of the clones, like Dolly, the sheep, and some frogs and whatever else, they did it with amphibians. Amphibians were their most successful ones that they said, but all of them passed away early on. They didn't live the full extent of the life. So that also started to make me wonder, well, anytime you're messing with nature, you know, you probably have like bad things happen. And I think I can't remember if it's Idiocracy or there's a movie like that where the guy has like 4 clones of himself. I can't remember what the movie is. You might know it, but he's got like 4 clones of himself, and each one is like broken in a different way. Oh, I don't know what that was. But if that's possible,
was Michael Keaton?
But now they're talking about this whole, like, you know, bringing the wolves back and the mammoths and all that other stuff. Personally, I don't believe they can do any of those things, because that's getting into, you know, gene sequencing and the DNA and PCR tests, which, you know, they can lie a lot with these things. And they can have regular wolves. Like, things can be just regular things, and they can say this is one. Kind of like when Ancestry.com, which is owned by BlackRock, was collecting everybody's DNA, but a DNA test uses a PCR test. And a PCR test can be amplified to get any result that you want. So this is where it gets crazy. I've gone down this rabbit hole of the PCR test, and it's mind-blowing.
I want to go down there in a little bit. I obviously just wanted to open this one up because we did a little bit about the orphan trains in the past, but never a full-on examination. I think this was good. First of all, what you're talking about as far as the movie goes was that film with Michael Keaton. It's called Multiplicity.
That's what it is. Yes.
Okay, I remember that. So just getting that one on the record, that's something else somebody can go out there and watch. We don't want to ruin the movie for them, even though it came out 40 years ago. We don't want to ruin the movie. But let's get into this, because you brought up germs, and I know that you are a big proponent of terrain theory. I'm very much in that camp as well, though I haven't gone full on in. I still am very curious about this stuff, but there's no doubt that a healthy terrain is necessary to be able to fend off anything. And but when it comes to parasites, that's something else. When you want to talk about germ theory, whatever, but parasites, these living organisms, not viruses or anything like that, but the parasites. I saw you do something on this recently. You did a I think it was a video about eating raw meat, and you might have linked in a couple of thoughts about the claims of parasitic infection and things like that. And I tend to find a lot of the logic in the premise based on, hey, listen, the strength of stomach acid alone, how the hell can a little worm get past all of that stuff? However, what about the nature of parasites in general? Because we know that they're real, and we know tapeworms are real, and these things can cause problems. But as far as how we get them and what kind of damage they're actually causing and how they are affecting mankind on a larger level, where has your research and theorizing taken you with that?
So when I first started on parasites, you know, nothing really made sense. You know, there's all these videos that they put all over social media, and they're telling people that these worms are going to get them. They're going to eat this food, and then the worms are going to jump in them. And it's all fear. I've realized that's my opinion on that. And then I also was looking into the work of Ajanis with the Primal Diet. This is a great book for everybody to look into. He also talks about how parasites are just part of your body. And the more I would go into this, the more I would find that I would find studies that say parasites are eating the heavy metals. And this was with fish, this was with sharks, this was with fox, this was with dogs, cats, all kinds of things. Now, what's weird is a lot of those studies are being removed, which makes you wonder why they would remove a study that talks about how once an animal has lots of heavy metals, it begins to develop parasites. So then I started to wonder, well, is the body producing parasites? Is the body producing worms? And I started to go through all of these things because I started thinking, okay, well, if you were meant to be kept alive because you were eating heavy metals, you're eating pesticides, you're eating a toxic diet, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not exercising, you're not in the sun, you're not working out all the time, taking care of this beautiful crystal that you are, well, then the body is going to start to develop something to keep you alive. And that's where the parasites come in. The parasites come in to eat up the heavy metals in order to keep the body alive for a longer period of time. And what they're doing is they're eating up all this dead tissue. And people go, oh, I didn't know I have dead tissue in the body. Well, if you're not regenerating, then these parasites will start eating that tissue. And so what happens is people have now gone on this whole kick that they got to, rip all these things out of their body, but they're part of your body. And it was interesting because Ajanis actually did a study where he took dogs and cats and he fed them a cooked diet and he gave them herbal dewormers. He gave them another group the cooked diet, and then he gave them non-natural dewormers, such as synthetic ones. And then he gave another group of the dogs, he gave them pure raw food, raw meat, like steak tartare, and gave them tons of that. What he noticed was the first two groups, the 60 to 40% of the animals died, even though they took the dewormers. Now, the interesting thing was the third group, which was the one that ate the raw meats, didn't use the dewormers, actually lived, went through a little bit of pain, obviously because of the worms and whatever, went through a little bit of pain. But when those dogs passed about a couple years later, we'll say 5 years later, their insides were completely brand new. So if you think about it, we've been told to cook our food and you got to stay away from this and it's raw and it's that and it's that. And so I put it to the test. I literally bought some grass-fed steak and I ate it on camera because I just decided I'm going to try it. I'm going to see what happens. And I noticed I felt cranked up. And then it made me start leading to this rabbit hole of why are we cooking all of our foods? And you find tribes like the Maasai tribes who eat raw meat all the time. They even drink raw milk. They make everything is raw. And you see all these tribes who are doing this, and you just got to start wondering why all of your food is pasteurized. You get a can of tuna, they heat it to 250 degrees before you eat it. So it's mineralless, it's been zapped, it's been cooked. Then you look at all these other food products that they're putting on the shelf, and you start to look at things and go, this doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you take a pan and you're cooking it. And he had one more thing, which really blew my mind. He said when you heat the food, the metals get released and then you get heavy metal poisoning. Versus when people are eating raw foods, it just passes through them. So I thought of the whole tuna in the can with the mercury. Well, it's heated, it's been cooked. That's why you get the mercury issue. And then they sell you a new can with a different mercury, lower mercury, that's what they say, even though they heated it and did the same thing. So it's this old bait and switch, but the more I would go down the parasites, the more I found ivermectin, fenben, all these pills, these pharmaceutical pills, because that's what they are for people to take, because they're not going to take what they took in 2020, which were the shots. Now they're going to take a different pill. And that's how the Rockefellers roll. The Rockefellers plan things called Operation Lockstep in advance for every person to be on. And when they don't get you with this side, which is getting the injections, they get you on this side. And they got something new for you. And so this is the whole parasite thing. And I see it all over social media. People put fear into people and they're like, how do I buy these products? Where do I get it from? Well, here's the funny part. The pharmaceuticals, or the pills, I should say, are excluded from the tariffs. Isn't it interesting that the pills that cause poison and the injections are excluded from the tariffs? So you have to sit there and go, does this whole parasite thing make sense? This craze, because everywhere you turn, every social media you turn on, even if you go on big platforms and whatever else, it's all parasite, parasite, parasite. What happened if the parasites are part of your body and you're destroying your body again, just in a different way? And I had lots of people reach out who were sending me messages that they use these products that we just mentioned, and they develop liver failure and kidney failure and all types of other issues. Because you have things like citric acid, which is sprayed with aluminum, grown on canola patties. You got polysorbate 80, which breaks down your blood-brain barrier. You got deionized water, and you got a whole bunch of cornstarch and other synthetic things too. And now that they are allowing politicians to allow people to get it over the counter because, politicians are there for the people. We all know that. So now that they're allowing it over the counter, everybody has access to it. Kind of like Tylenol, which causes heart attacks and liver failure and knows people's emotions. So the more I would dig on this, the more I would see if you talk about it and you say what you should say, you get 1 billion views. If you say the other side and we talk about this, you just watch your views go just like that.
Well, it's funny you say that. It's funny you say that, Matt, because at this point, I don't know what's going to happen to this episode on YouTube, because in one sense, you're giving some pretty, interesting, laying down some pretty interesting commentary on the nature of parasites. Because and on the other hand, ivermectin, which, it has over the last couple of years been as sensitive a topic to talking about as Israel. You don't seem very keen on how that has become such a popular thing, or at least one that has inspired a lot of curiosity, and how off-label use could be beneficial to humans, and it's something outside of course, parasitic, anti-parasitic uses. Getting back to the parasites thing, bacteria. We understand that when you take antibiotics, if you're ever in a situation where it is prescribed to you and somebody has to take it, you're often taking it with live cultures and all that stuff to support your gut biome, because you're annihilating everything, including the bacteria that we so desperately need to create that, to make sure that your gut flora is nice and healthy and working well. So it's not a stretch to me to consider how parasites are something that is inherent in all of us and floating around, and has become part of that very complex immune system that we have. But there is malicious and bad bacteria. Is there not malicious and bad parasites?
Well, I think of like the mistletoe plant and how the mistletoe attaches to the tree and helps the tree grow. So the more I kind of thought about parasites, the more I kind of started thinking they're there for a reason. And if you destroy all of them, just like you mentioned with the anti-life products, if you destroy all of them, what happens when you destroy your body? Because you're taking away from the natural ways that your body is meant to do. And that's why I tell people, like, you could stick to things like wormwood. You can do things like turpentine. I've talked about even dragon's blood. I've talked about baking soda.
And that would target like a tapeworm, for example?
That will target the heavy metals, because what those worms are doing is they're trying to eat up all the heavy metals and all the dead tissue that's in your body. So they're just trying to collect it. Think of them as like the collector of your body. And so when you chelate those heavy metals, the worms are just going to dissolve because they don't need to be there. But if you keep polluting yourself and then pop some pills, because that's what your thought is, you didn't get rid of the pollution. And then now when you destroy the worms that are part of your body, now you have the heavy metal overload, you have the toxins that you just put in your body, and you never address the root cause. And I've had people reach out where they're like, oh, my dogs and my cats have this. And I ask, is your dog or a cat on a raw organic diet? And they say, no, it eats kibble. And it's like, there we go. Like, we just start to look at what the animals are eating or what we're doing, and we can start to understand it. And like I said, you look at everything. I look at every part of your body like it's meant to be there, And our system, unfortunately, is about always removing everything. And that's the Rockefeller playbook. Like, you have your tonsils, they're going to take them out. You have your wisdom teeth, which is connected to your heart, they take them out. Like, even with your eyes now, they cut people's eyes, like crazy stuff, like some sci-fi weird stuff. So I started to think about it like, these are meant to be here. And all we have to do is clean up our diet rather than saying, I got to target this. Because what are you doing? You're destroying your own bodily functions, which doesn't make any sense.
I always like hearing your point of view, and of course every guest's point of view on things like that. It's hard for me to swallow the whole thing, because I can't imagine a situation where everything that gets inside of us is supposed to be there, or there is a place where it works into the grand scheme of keeping you healthy, strong, that it doesn't have to be fought off or in some way remediated. like with the whole ivermectin thing. And I said, we got to be careful, but I don't even know. But now, like, this has been pretty critical. It actually, I like it because now it gives us a little cover there. But there are two main theories as to why this pharmaceutical product like ivermectin was so maligned during COVID. The first being, of course, that it had a safety profile that rivaled water, and it was very effective in delivering zinc into cells, zinc ionophore in that respect, and would drastically undercut the hysteria that had been carefully built up around the bug and the need that had been created to keep the world locked down. If you're keeping everybody inside to wait until, a big groundbreaking remedy comes through, you can't have something that is readily available, cheap, not nearly going to make as much profit as the what is it, $500 billion that they made in a year, Pfizer alone. But then, and I know that you would challenge the idea that there even was a bug, but then we come to the underground theory number 2, and that is that it is mainly billed as an antiparasitic, ivermectin is. And it was being suggested that if people started taking this stuff even semi-regularly, just as a prophylactic against any kind of infection, we would incidentally blow the lid off of how serious a problem parasites actually are, with causing a whole host of issues, including things like the big C and whatnot. Obviously, you're not on that train at all.
No, because it deflects from the 500,000 cell phone towers, which are going to roll out in the next 3 years. And then they're going to do a whole nother nonsense and say that now the new internet, 6G, that's part of it. I mean, and that's the thing is, and that's why I say they focus your eyes here to deflect you from over here. And also, too, those pills, you can look up this, 2015, since 2015, they've been putting graphene oxide into anything that you get prescribed. Anything that you get prescribed, 2015, there's a perfect PubMed study, you can see that. So they've been doing this for a long time. And all they're doing, in my opinion, is getting people on the bandwagon. And here's a playbook that is just, if you want to take it to another level. Okay, you get all these truth people, right? All these truth people, you get them all on this bandwagon because the truth people aren't taking the shots. We'll keep it as that, really simple. Truth people aren't taking the shots, but what are they taking? They're taking those pills. Okay, you orchestrate another thing. I had somebody send me a message, what do I take if they do something else? I take right now ivermectin. So if you see the 3-year window, because I always like to look into the future or into the past, like I've told you, you see down there, you go, all these people are going to jump for that. What happens when all those people jump for that and then there's actually poison in it? Then you just removed a lot of people who are your resistance. And this is why I talk about this, because there is so much nonsense floating around in the air. We're supporting the same industry which was trying to depopulate us in 2020. Like all the little Muppets and puppets up on television trying to tell people to take stuff, all they're trying to do is do that. And I don't support that. I want you to be healthy. I want your family to be healthy. I want everybody to be healthy. And we should address the root cause rather than deflecting to say, it's this. It's not your Wi-Fi in your house. It's not the clothes you're wearing, the food you're eating, the water you're drinking. Why don't we just look at that? Because that's what you're affected by most likely all the time. Or even dirty electricity, because a lot of people too, you got a lot of people talking about how the sun is changing and that whole thing. Well, they're cranking up the electricity. All this new technology and infrastructure requires electricity. And that electricity can mess up our health. And there's a great book, Dr. Milham, Dirty Electricity. He's got a great book. He's 93 years old and he's still trucking along telling people about this. But he's been telling people about people getting illnesses for a long time. This is where we have to focus our shift, because when we clean up these things, we can clean up our health. Over here, we just have these companies that have been around since the 1700s, poisoning people, making money off of people. So that's my thing.
It's going to elicit a lot of interesting comments, no doubt, just from the parasites angle, and that perhaps there are any situations where there could be an intermediate or something that could be a useful tool. While of course your main premise there that we got to get our bodies back to normal state of natural function. We got to make sure that we know that our water sources, that what's going on above us, that everything that we can do to keep the terrain clean and strong, we can become nearly I was not going to say invincible, because of course that's the moment that you get a snake bite on the ankle, then you're dead. But that's just, I think it's going to be interesting to see what people say about this. There are some questions that I had put together, random ones from me and the audience, and I think this next one would be a good one to slip in right now. This one came from Chad. He said, lately, Matt has been talking a lot about how vitamins are also a boogeyman tier scam. What should people who are facing deficiencies, whether it's due to illness, environmental toxins, or just nutritionally depleted food, look into to supplement those deficiencies, at least in the meantime?
So I've talked a lot about superfoods, obviously, because I'm all about that. I used to be in the fitness world. I had synthetic everything going into my body. I can tell you about whey protein and how synthetic that is, and creatine and all the other stuff that they sell us. It's pasteurized as well. That's why they add minerals back to it. But people want to opt for real food, raw food, all organic food. You know, you can do things like bee pollen. You can do things like raw milk. You can do things like grass-fed meats. You can do grass-fed organ meats. You know, you can do high quality if you want to get into different vegetables. If you want to bring vegetables or fruits into your body, or nuts, make sure that they're organic. You know, you can even look into sprouted, which is just another higher level of that, or heirloom. But yeah, we want to bring real foods into our body because that's how we heal. And there's tons. You can go to the grocery store. There's still tons of things out there. Or you can go to a local farmer's market and you can find natural or organic food still. And you can connect with your farmers. And if you want, you can even take it a step further. You can reach out in Pennsylvania to the Amish farms. And if you need stuff, they can ship it to you. There's tons of Amish farmers who will send you anything that you need: raw cheeses, raw butter, raw cream, you know, eggs that are not fed soy and canola and corn and whatever. But yeah, the whole vitamin thing is a rabbit hole. I found out that when I started looking up who made the vitamins, I found Merck and I found Bayer. And we know those companies because they've been doing the same thing for a long time. And the Rockefellers were the first person to get the funding for the vitamins. You had Casimir Funk was his name. He was a scientist who created these different vitamins. And then Bayer and then Merck followed with that. And what happened was after the wars, which reset a lot of the knowledge that me and you are talking about right now, vitamins became cool. They started doing vitamin donuts and telling people they need vitamins and they need to refortify their food. All of those are synthetic. The body cannot absorb them. This is why nobody has fixed an ailment with vitamins. They are always taking vitamins. You meet people that got 55 pills of vitamins because they haven't fixed the ailment. The body's not absorbing this. And they put a lot of weird synthetic fillers, synthetic flavors, all different types of things in there that you don't know what you're bringing in. And when you take one, this is the other issue, you take a vitamin C product, well, it could cause you a vitamin D deficiency. And I say this because I had somebody who reached out who had low iron, which blood work is nonsense too, but that's for another one, who had low iron, and they got the blood work done, and they tried our Shilla Shot, and they found out that their copper levels were actually low.
Same thing with zinc.
What was happening was the professional was telling them that they have low iron. But in reality, it was actually low copper. And because when you have one imbalance, you can have another. And this is why all of a sudden you're being sold like 75 different fish oils and whatever else when the body can't absorb anything, or, this is the best part, they're rancid or grown on some weird canola plant or whatever else, like prebiotics or probiotics and all of that. They grow it on canola and then they say it'll help your gut. So, you know, you get into all this and it's mind-blowing the more you go into it.
It is. And I think there's a lot of time and attention spent on vitamins, no doubt. I think that there are some people out there who take very special care in trying to find some kind of a reputable brand that's not connected to any of these bigger sources. Maybe it's sourced from smaller farms, maybe they're whole food-based supplements, whatever it is, just because they know what they're up against as far as depleted nutrients, nutrient value in food that's out there, and they want just a hedge. But the other thing there too is whereas the vitamin industry is huge, there's far less attention paid to minerals as well, and especially when you bring up zinc there. You brought up whatchamacallit, vitamin C. The funny thing there too is everybody talks so much about zinc. I was discussing this with my buddy Jay, who will actually be hanging out with me tomorrow night. He told me, you know, as far as limiting during cold and flu season, if you're going to have a zinc supplement, making sure that after a while you can offset that a little bit by taking a copper supplement, because that also affects copper as well. So there's a lot of things that are, people only know very specific little tidbits of information, and they double and triple down on it. And like you said, I don't know, the front of a vitamin bottle is very convincing, and I know I took things. I was always looking for new things to add into my regimen, and it's just one of those. It's all over the place. Speaking about that, because now we're getting into like the farming aspect. I only have a couple more questions for you. The Maha situation, the Maha movement that is now in HHS, for whatever it is floating out there, whatever carrots it's dangling right now, it is definitely spooking a lot of people in local governments about fluoride, that they think that fluoride is going away. It's created some really interesting reactions. Some people are so scared. They think that seed oils are going away, and that's some miraculous thing that we need. But the other thing that I have seen recently, I think it was out of, I don't know, one of those Midwestern states or something, one of the big farming states, is they're very upset and scared that glyphosate is going to be taken away from farming and cleansing all of our crops. And so somebody had asked me, Sarah had asked me, since it's springtime, anything you may want to suggest as far as people who are looking to starting a new section of their garden up, or if they, again, a follow-up on electroculture for a new year, for a new spring and summer season, growing things in your yard or whatever. If you can go out there and clean out your garden and not use any of these Roundup based kind of insecticides, pesticides, stuff like that, and do something a little bit more natural like electroculture, what would you do give people as a nice little tidbit of beginner's advice?
Well, first, like you said, avoid the hardware store. Everything in there just literally tells you that you're going to destroy nature, which makes no sense, because then you're going to eat nature, but you destroyed it to eat it. So that doesn't make any sense. And also, glyphosate blocks copper. It destroys the shikimate pathway and blocks you from absorbing copper. So if you're doing electroculture and you spray glyphosate all over, the electroculture is not going to work the same, because you're spraying pesticides, which are blocking the exact same thing. So, when people want to get into this, they can look into Rudolf Steiner's work. I highly recommend. He has a great book called Agriculture. And it's interesting because Rudolf Steiner did not beat around the bush. He was very blunt, and he talked about everything in the 1920s, like me and you are talking about right now. And we just have to look at nature, understand nature, and start to take care of nature, basically. And if you're going to start with electroculture, very simple to do. Piece of wood, wrap with copper, stick it in your garden, just let your garden go nuts. You can look into making different composts, composting over the winter, so that you can spread that compost all over your soil so that it can help with the nutrients and the life force. And you can also look into quartz as another one too. He used to take cow horns, fill them with manure and fill them with quartz, and then he would stick them in the earth, and that would help elevate the energy. But all you're really trying to do is connect with your land too. You can't just kind of like just throw it in whatever and just say whatever you're going to do. You got to really connect with your land. I got birds all over the place, bees everywhere, everything's pollinating like crazy. That's how it should be. You got to be connected. You got to be present. And sometimes we try to go for chemicals and other weird Franken stuff that doesn't make any sense. And then we just mess up our land, and everything that you put, so people are aware, everything you put on your land also goes into your water. So if you're spraying all these pesticides and chemicals all over your land, you're also putting it into your water and into the water that's below you and connected all around you. So if you're doing barefoot grounding too, you got to be careful, because you could be stepping on all these pesticides. But I would say look into Steiner's work. It's phenomenal. And I got a bunch of his stuff in my book that I'm working on. It's almost done with electroculture, but it's just phenomenal. It's just about connecting to the earth and understanding to utilize everything from the earth, because we can't synthetically pour vitamins on the earth and pesticides and drugs in order to have healthy food.
When's the book coming out?
Hoping within the next couple months. It's
Okay.
just I got to finish up a little bit of the photos, and then we're rocking and rolling. So it's taken me a long time, because I have put everything I can possibly think of that relates to the old world into this book, so that people can have the access to every single thing me and you could talk about for probably hours. And then some, and cold electricity, which we were talking about that in the beginning of Tesla.
Cold electricity. Oh, I'd love to know a little bit more about that for sure. I really would. That would be fun. And not only that, but when I go to cultivateelevate.com every once in a while to see how things are going over there, I keep reminding myself, if somebody stumbled upon your website first, they would never know that you've got hundreds of thousands of people who subscribe to you across various social media platforms for these deep dives into history. You do a lot of reading, a lot of research, and people just love the coziness of the topics that you cover. But on your website, it's largely absent. You just talk about your products, your superfoods, and all that stuff. It's almost like you have two separate lives that people have to like piece together here, because it's pretty big internet presence, but there's almost nothing on the website about it.
Well, a lot of the things too that you just said, all those videos, everything's censored. I mean, when you pull up just like Cultivate Elevate, or if you try to pull up my name, there's only like 2 videos on Google, and it's a YouTube video interview that I did in like 2020. Like all the stuff, a lot of it's all blocked, and that's what I realized. So I was like, the information is being put out there. But if you don't go to, like you said, Instagram or Telegram or Odyssey or Rumble or whatever it may be, it's challenging to find. And I got taken down from YouTube. They'd go after my channel after I just talked about the eclipse. I'm like, just go out there, check it out.
I remember that.
Just do it. It's great for you. It's not going to hurt you. And then they were like, oh, we got to take that down. It was taken down in 17 minutes. So I was like, oh, okay. I guess I'm breaking your bubble. And that's what I realized is a lot of the stuff, it pokes a hole in the bubble, and then it dissolves the nonsense. And I realized that event that takes place deprograms the mind. That's why they tell people not to watch it.
It's, deprogramming the mind, sleepwalking through life. Sleepwalking is something I actually wanted to ask you about. The last thing I have for you tonight, this actually came by way of a viewer named Christy, and I'm glad she brought it up. She said, Frank, a few weeks ago, you proposed a topic for people who have been part of sleep studies to call in with the strangest thing that they witnessed themselves do while they were asleep. And of course, sleepwalking stories found their way into the episode. I saw Matt's post about sleepwalking recently, so I figured he might have some interesting to say about this. I have not seen this post. I have not watched the video, but I got this question. I said, let's end with this. What have you got for us on sleepwalking recently?
So people can look into the work of Carl von Reichenbach. He was the one who actually did 5,000 experiments on sleepwalkers. And what he noticed was whenever the full moon would come, that people would start sleepwalking. And so what he did was he took them and he put them in like an all dark room, and he blacked out the windows, and he noticed that their sleepwalking resolved. Something was drawing them to the moon. And he called this, if you get into the Ode energy or the Odic energy or the ether, the chi, the prana, the orgone, whatever word you want to call it, that was drawing him. And so when he was studying all of this stuff, he also studied that when you put a person in pitch black, these same people who were sleepwalking would be able to see different colors if they were exposed to different metals which were hit by the sun or the moon. They would see what was called like a golden flame. And he called them the sensitives. So that's why he experimented on them. And they willingly did it because the families were trying to figure out, why is my child sleepwalking all the time and walking around the house all the time? But when he exposed them to metals which were connected to the outside in a pitch black room, they had a golden flame. So for example, this is crazy. So copper, as we know, is you have the golden color right here. And it starts to, when it turns patina, like the Statue of Liberty, it starts to turn green. And what he noticed was when you put a sensitive or a sleepwalker in an all pitch black room, and that sun or the moon would hit that copper, they would see a green flame. So then I started thinking, okay, this is like taking it to a whole nother level, because you're seeing like the aura, almost like the Dysonin glasses from Dr. Kilner, which would be able to see the aura. He would change the color spectrums to see this. But so Carl von Reichenbach did all these studies, and he was determining that they were being called by the moon. And when the moon would crank up, because we all know when the full moon comes, you get a lot of energy. And when the eclipse comes, you get a lot of energy. Then these people would begin to sleepwalk. But Carl von Reichenbach's book is really cool, and his stuff is from like the 1700s and 1800s, and people are calling him crazy. And what was really wild was he got to the point, because he sat in the rooms for so long, in a pitch black room for a long period of time, that he could see the colors too. And this makes you wonder, perfect example, you got light pollution everywhere. You are never in pitch black anymore. And you have to ask yourself, does that dim your sixth sense that you have? Because you no longer are in pitch black anymore. And all of Carl von Reichenbach's work was in pitch black rooms. So it's interesting.
That is interesting. I wonder if there's any overlap with subjects like that keep coming up on this show and elsewhere on the internet now too, where everybody continues to express curiosity about those old school 1970s, 80s, 90s gate and tag programs in school. These gifted students, and there's always these fact patterns with the people who are brought into the programs and whatever. And whereas you can say they might be a little bit more, I don't know, advanced in some way, it always comes down to whether or not these are psychically gifted children, psychically gifted people. And to think that sleepwalking may be in some way indicative of psychic talents, latent psychic talents that are being inadvertently or just, naturally awakened by the cycles of the moon. That's I hope you find out more on that, because it's one thing to say they can see things in the dark when you introduce certain types of metals and things like that, and elements like copper that are in there. But it's another thing to know what exactly they have as far as abilities go. Because I have to imagine that most people, you say, all right, well, you're a sleepwalker, and we think that you are in some way a lunatic or whatever. The moon is giving you extra power. They'd be, oh, great, who cares? Keep me in my bed. I don't consider this a superpower that I'm ending up down the street, every time that the moon is full. I would want to know, all right, that's interesting. Where do we go from here? So if you find anything else out, please let me know, and we'll do a follow-up on this.
Well, and if I hit on one more, it's called the RhoGAM shot. It's the shot that they give to Rh negative children, which is Rh negative blood types. And you get into that's loaded with mercury. And it makes you wonder why they would target a specific, when you get into the whole thing with blood types, why they would target a specific blood type. And then if we talk about, like you just said, the ability to somebody to have maybe the sixth sense or some other, let's say, talent or skill or whatever it is, it's almost like you're trying to get rid of the certain maybe people who might have that ability. And it's just interesting because a lot of these abilities, like we're talking about, began to fade into the 1930s and 1940s. And the only things that came out were, you have shots going into people, number one. Number two, a lot of them, I should say. Number two, you also have electricity. And then you also have radios. So you almost think, like, you start to look at all that and go, there's almost like this disruption that's now taking place because you're trying to dim the energy. And when you get into all the places coming down with illnesses, anytime they would introduce electricity, they would come down with all these illnesses. Any farms that didn't have electricity didn't have the same illnesses. So if you wanted to dim the sixth sense that we were just talking about too, you would also give them something of technology, which might be in that place. And then maybe you don't hear about it that much anymore, because I don't hear about sleepwalking and people, walking off buildings anymore. So you kind of wonder, where did it go?
Yeah, maybe into the toaster oven, perhaps. There's nothing but appliances every 2 feet now. So it's a interesting theory. Matt, it's always great to have you back on. And I hope that we can make some time in a couple of months, maybe right smack dab in the middle of summer. Hopefully something is cooking. There's always something cooking with you over there. So we'll keep in touch, and we'll keep compiling these lists of topics. Let everybody know what you're doing next, where to find you, and of course what you have going on with the wonderful products that you sell on cultivateelevate.com.
So you can find us on cultivateelevate.com. Working on more superfoods. We're working on rolling out some new superfoods in the future. Just testing them. Testing takes a long time because I don't want to roll something out, and I don't want anything, weird happening with people. So working on that, and then working on my book as well, and then just trucking along, just finding topics and talking about things Like even we were going to talk about the tariffs and topics like that.
Oh shit! Damn it! That was like a major one that I wanted to ask you about.
Yep.
We're in the
Yep.
Gilded Age. What? Okay, listen. You have 3 minutes, or how long do we need for this?
I could explain it in 5 minutes. That's easy.
Okay.
Not even.
Okay.
3 minutes.
That's like the only thing we missed here, and I would have kicked myself if we didn't do this. So we're talking about the Gilded Age here tonight, and I would love to know what you think about President Trump and his tariffs, specifically how he has referenced the Gilded Age in America from that 1870 to 1910-ish kind of time, where we had, it's like Reconstruction is going on. We have the early 20th century, rapid industrialization, flood of new technologies, the World's Fairs. These are all hot topics for you, pre-Federal Reserve. You reference this era a lot. So I was curious, how are you taking all this stuff? You have the floor, and that's how we'll end.
That's cool. So the prosperity situation was no Federal Reserve. Nobody had income tax. Once they started incorporating all these income taxes, they started screwing the people. Tariffs also screwed the people. 1890s, you have McKinley. McKinley talks about how tariffs are going to save us. We got to get rid of immigration or the migration and whatever. And these tariffs are going to save our country. Well, what happened was in 1893, you had a money panic. You had the stock market go down, and the economy went to basically zilch. And it was interesting because as he is quoting McKinley had a quote which he said, "I don't think that this is a good idea. These tariffs are not working. People stop doing business with our country, and we have destroyed the farmers, and we have destroyed what America was built on." Well, now we have Trump talking about a World's Fair, right? We're coming back to a World's Fair. Guess what happens in 1893 with McKinley? He's at a World's Fair, and somebody gives him one of those. So when you kind of sit there and go, and you see this, you kind of sit there and go, well, why, if you're going to quote somebody, why would you quote somebody who has this information and already knew that the tariffs were not a good idea? The other time tariffs were imposed, just so people know, Great Depression, you have, it's like the Hoover, or whoever, the Hoot tariff or whatever. During the Great Depression, it further pushes the Great Depression into where unemployment goes up to 27%. And the Great Depression was orchestrated by bankers, but you also have these tariffs. So people have to be aware that all they're doing is giving you an additional tax. And this is a great thing people can look into. There's a chart that shows how much money comes into America every single year based on taxes, Social Security, tariffs, and there's actually a shot tax. When people are getting those shots, there's a tax on that too as well. But anyways, there's a whole chart. And it says about $4 trillion comes in every single year from the taxes. That we could get onto that topic too, voluntary, but whatever. So there's $4 trillion that comes in on this chart. If you look at the chart, the tariff is like a little sliver, like this little tiny sliver. So you have to ask yourself, and this is just the question of the day or the question of the end of this. You have to ask yourself how these tariffs are going to cover $4 trillion. You have income tax, which is half of it, which is $2 trillion. And then you have Social Security, which is about a fourth of it. They don't want to get rid of those because why would they get rid of your taxes for income and Social Security? Now, when you add a tariff, you add another thing. And what I think personally, this is just my thoughts, is that the tax-free will come from them trying to tell you to move to cryptocurrency. You'll have digital credit and digital currency, but you'll be tax-free and you'll be trapped forever. So that's kind of what I kind of see when I look at this. And I've looked at history a lot, and you see the same thing on repeat. So we have to be aware of the repetitive things that they will do to us over and over and over.
Matt Roski, always bringing what he has unapologetically. I thank you for the time, sir, and we will talk soon.
I'll see you, brother.
All right. Be well. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. I got some thoughts on that. We're going to get my thoughts out on that. And of course, all of your super chats, your Rumble rants, all of that in just a second. We want to go to an intermission and a word from our sponsor of the night, That is My Pillow. Don't go anywhere.
I hear every day about the products you all wish My Pillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard My Pillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use My Pillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all My Pillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard My Pillows absolutely free.
The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 10 commandments.
Quite frankly, he's amazing.
Okay, let's get to some super chats. Let's get to you guys. Let's do some stuff because in about 20 minutes we have Jim Lee coming on for a few more minutes because I want to ask him about geoengineering news that has come out and a few other things. Maybe if we have time, the 4chan hack. Probably won't have time for the Russia thing tonight. But as far as tariffs goes, like I've said before, I am philosophically opposed to tariffs. I think that is antithetical to free trade, fair trade, but we don't have that. If I'm looking at Gilded Age America, where there is no income tax, we're largely unregulated compared to where we are today, and you have the Industrial Revolution that is just motoring right along, to implement tariffs there and to cut yourself off from the rest of the world when you are a bastion for free enterprise, that sounds a little ridiculous. Now, I have not looked into the McKinley tariffs and anything too much, but that is a situation where I would be like, that's a head scratcher. What we have going on right now does not represent this. It doesn't compare from a starting point. You know, I understand why you're going to put a tariff on somebody who has gotten way too fat and happy and comfortable fucking you over. So I understand that point. Now, I also have to imagine that somewhere down the line, addressing taxes has to be part of the situation. Are we going to live to see the end of the federal income tax? Boy, would I love to see that. Is it at least going to be backed off? And the other thing there, too, is, again, when Matt brings up $4 trillion, when you talk about entitlements spending, government programs, defense, Social Security, Medicare, you put it all together. Remember, you actually need a fraction of the money to cover all of that stuff because there's so much bloat inside of it. Just think about what the early estimates of what could be taken off of the top of Social Security as it is today is. When you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars, nearing $750 billion, that could probably be taken off the top just from anomalous people that are part of the system and are either getting some kind of direct payments or by way of having an open Social Security number, there could be other lines of credit being opened up somewhere else. And then you get down into just the nitty-gritty of everyday people who are actually alive and taking advantage of the system. If you somehow then are able to get millions of people who should not be here and are really not putting anything in but taking a lot out to self-deport, you know what? We're looking at a lot smaller bill every year. A lot smaller bill. And The real question is, can you string together enough years with enough of a mandate and somebody who's actually, or people who are actually willing to go out there and do it and not just pay lip service and then give everybody some kind of a consolation prize at the end of those years when you don't get what you want? I mean, that's the real question. Is it possible? Yeah. Yes, it is. Are we going to get it? Yet to be seen. But I understand why tariffs are being put into place now. Jay Britt says, great show, Frank. Every time you have Matt on, he pokes holes in all the things all of the knowledge I had thought I had gained on nutrition and health. Well, I can't wait to see what Jay Gulanello says tomorrow if he stops by, especially about parasites. How could it be that all the parasites in your body that are just there or make their way in are good, or they serve a purpose? Let it eat. It's looking for heavy metals. I don't know. That just something about that doesn't. I don't know. Let's see what else here on the Quite Frankly Rumble. Then we're going to go to the Badlands Rumble. Jay Semo says, cheers, Frank. Great show. Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much. Over there on Badlands. So happy to have you guys and gals hanging out with us on Thursday nights. I'm so happy to be hanging out with you. K.O. Kelly says, this makes sense about tapeworms eating heavy metal. Don't they put earthworms in landfills to help clean up the garbage? I don't know. Are earthworms considered parasites? Earthworms are not considered parasites. They are free-living organisms that live in soil and feed on organic matter, contributing to nutrient cycling and soil health. So they're probably there for biological composting reasons. Parasites, by definition, live on or in a host organism, obviously, and derive nutrients at the host's expense, often causing harm. No, it's just cleaning up the heavy metals. Earthworms do not fit this description as they do not rely on a host or cause harm in this way. So, no, that's a little off kilter, K, but thank you so much because now we got some clarity on it. S. Jones 39 says, great second episode on Badlands, Frank. Love your show. This is actually the third, I'm very proud to say. The first one we had a regenerative farmer on. Last week we had Jay Dyer to talk esoteric Hollywood. Tonight we have Matt Roski. Next week, let's see here. I'll just let you know real quick because we're making good time tonight. Next week, what do we have? Eric Hunley. April 24th, Eric Hunley. One of the guys over there at America's Untold Stories. Wonderful account. In fact, they had whatever I know about McKinley, I know from them. They put together a great episode on the assassination of William of McKinley. And maybe I'll bring that up. Maybe I will bring that up because maybe we can talk about tariffs. What do people need to know about McKinley and banking and everything else? Because there might be more to that story. That's April 24th. Then on May 1st, we have Darren Monahan coming on. These are all Thursday night shows. So Badlands will be in on it. Listen to this, Badlands and everybody else. Darren Monahan, he's a former corrections officer at San Quentin, and he was in charge of guarding high-profile criminals like Charles Manson. So that's going to be an interesting interview. Then, of course, we have John Harold of Badlands coming on the show on May 8th. Oh, there's more coming on. After that, on May 15th, it's Michael Collins. I want to talk to him about Göbekli Tepe. But here's the other thing. On May 15th, the Supreme Court just announced today that birthright citizenship is going to be heard. They're going to be talking about birthright citizenship on May 15th. So my question is, can I get a Brian McClanahan to come back on the show sometime before then, on May 12th or something, to talk about the 14th Amendment? I would love that, and we'll figure it out because that's going to be a big day. That's going to be a big day. You want to talk about stepping stones to actually being able to reduce a lot of the bloat and waste and criminality and priority that has been put on non-citizens. That's going to be a big one right there, SCOTUS. Are they going to do what needs to be done? It's going to be a major check against the 14th Amendment, which, as Brian McClanahan would even say, has replaced the Constitution altogether. All right. Thank you, S. Jones, 39. Gave me a reason to go through the schedule over here. All right. Over on Pill, let's get to those super. And you know what? Here, it's 8:25. I've got some time now that I didn't think I was going to have. We could take some of your calls. 914-200-0269. 914-200-0269. We could take some calls for the next 10 minutes until we have Jim Lee's show back up to talk a little bit. Let's see. Over on quitefrankly.tv, C. Blanche says, eat like an animal. Bastards want to poison us on every level. Amen. We are winning. Thank you, C. Blanche. Good to have you out there. I'm glad to see you're fired up. Swickley says, here's some cookies. Thank you so much. Hopefully there are no seed oils in them. No stud all muffin. Thank you. Almazan. Thank you. Both of you so much. Zetanon. Thank you for the phone. Paulie9363 and Zeta9 says, they are very nutritious. Thicken a soup type O thing. What are you talking about? Are you talking about the cookies? They're very nutritious, he says. Or are you talking about the worms? Here's a little bit of a follow-up for you on the miracle at Coney Island. This is about Martin Cooney, the incubator doctor, saved thousands of lives of premature babies at the fun fair exhibits at a time when doctors did not trust the new incubator technology. Listen to this. This is from BBC Radio documentary. In March of 2016, the author, where's the Claire Prentice, recorded interviews in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania for Life Under Glass, a BBC Radio 4 documentary about Martin Cooney, the incubator doctor who exhibited premature babies in Coney Island, Atlantic City, and amusement parks and world fairs across America and in Europe, Mexico, South America from the late 1890s until the 1940s. Look at this. Holding them like kittens. Like, get them back in get those kids back in the incubators. They're not ready to come out. Cooney ran his facilities like miniature hospital wards and employed a large team of physicians, nurses, wet nurses who lived on site. He charged the public 25 cents to see the babies in their incubators and their struggle between life and death. When Cooney started out, American hospitals were ambivalent over whether premature babies should be saved and suspicious of incubator technology, so Cooney ran his facility as a medical outsider. And far from being embraced as a hero, he was accused of exploiting the babies. However, he didn't take a penny for their care. He used the entrance fees to pay for the incubators, the wet nurses' milk, the medical supplies, and the nurses' and the doctors' wages. And apparently, they saved quite a few children. Now, on the orphan train issue, I got this for you. Like I said, this stuff is real. It did happen. The real question is how much of these children that were all over the place were the product of cloning or some other major rapture-like event in the world. The orphan trains, influx of immigrants into the East Coast cities in the 1830s led to tremendous rise in child homelessness, particularly in New York City. Its streets were home to an estimated 10,000 to 30,000 children in 1850. They were nicknamed street Arabs for their wandering habits. These youngsters moved in gangs for protection and often sold matches, rags, and newspapers to survive. This prompted a rise of institutional orphanages, but minimal food, education, and attention were provided to residents who were expected to leave and fend for themselves by age 14. And the orphan trains, there were successes in the way that people were able to get these children on trains wherever they were, but there were train problems, of course. Hold on. Despite its obvious controversies, the trains process was in many ways a success. Countless new families were formed. A loving adoptive father holding his new baby, as the train station told a Nebraska newspaper, it beats the stork all hollow. You want to talk about the stork? In the Cabbage Patch Kids, these trains were bringing babies who were being surrendered by mothers, new mothers, all over the place, and they were just being claimed. That was the adoption process at the time. But and some of those problems over here, there were obvious drawbacks. Auction-like spectacle that took place at train stops was oftentimes degrading. Children were sized up and inspected in a fashion more appropriate for livestock than human beings. It was like a slave trade kind of a setting. So-called trained children were frequently bullied and ostracized in their new communities. Some were rejected and never found a home. Now listen to this. Oftentimes, the origins of these children are shrouded in mystery due to stigma surrounding adoption itself. Many orphan train passengers were never even told about their histories, and many were too young to ever recall where they came from. Older children were also strongly encouraged to break all contact with the past upon arrival in their new homes. The histories you didn't know about sometimes. You just don't know. Anyway, we've got a lot of people watching right now, and you still have 5 minutes to call in and make a quick statement. 914-200-0269. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. I'm a good driver. You just jump on in, and I'll take care of you. Otherwise, we're going to take a really quick break. When we come back, Jim Lee is going to be on the other side of the of that break, and you know what? We should probably do that. It's 8:32. I'm going to tell him right now. Hold on. Call now. We have time. Boom. All right, guys. Jim Lee coming up. We have a couple of really interesting things. And in the meantime, laugh at some of these videos. We'll see you in 2 minutes.
Charles. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars were so gallantly there, as though rockets were there, and the twilight's last gleaming, and the rocket's red glare were so gallantly there. Burst stripes were all there, and the rockets were there.
Everybody's there.
Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet blaze for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Somewhere in these arms are on your side.
By now, you've probably seen the new collab between Rise and Badlands Media, but I'll tell you what you haven't seen yet. The end of Clown World as we know it. But have no fear. Introducing the latest addition to the Badlands INTL lineup, the sequel to the best-selling Psy War series. We've been conditioned by these clowns to accept their circus. But it's time to unwind that and strike them out the history books. The future belongs to the real, and we've got it in droves. Go to badlandsmedia.tv/rise for the full line of premium and direct-to-garment streetwear. Made to order right here in the good old US of A, the heart of the resistance. The fall of Clown World is upon us, patriots. Let's make it official.
It's enough to get me to the boiling point!
All right. Yes, go check out Rise Attire. They make all of Quite Frankly stuff too. So please buy up all of the Badlands stuff. Take a look at the catalog, and you'll even see Quite Frankly hanging out on there. So between My Pillow and Rise Attire, also wherever you're watching right now, like the broadcast. Like the broadcast. It means a lot to this show, to the growth of the show. And also, if you're watching this after the fact, leave comments, leave thoughtful comments, because that also contributes greatly to the growth and the visibility of this show. All right. Enough of all that stuff. I have a sexy man from South Carolina calling me right now. I can't pass this up. Jim Lee, climateviewer.com. I had to bring him on for a special correspondent spot because some pretty interesting things are happening. That's right in his wheelhouse as well. Jim, how you feeling?
Pretty good. Want to fight about it?
Yes. Yes, you ask the same thing. I always say yes.
Well, let's get into it. 2 days ago, the EPA's head, Lee Zeldin, decided that he was going to call out Make Sunsets, a geoengineering startup, two Silicon Valley brats throwing balloons in the air. And he said specifically, Make Sunsets is a startup that is geoengineering by injecting sulfur dioxide into the sky and then selling cooling credits. This company is polluting the air we breathe. I've instructed my team that we need to quickly get to the bottom of this and take immediate action. And there was a collective hoorah, hoorah. The EPA is taking on geoengineering. Now I'm going to tell you why it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because for the first time in my lifetime, a federal official is addressing geoengineering. It's a good thing because for the first time in my lifetime, a federal official who's talking about geoengineering, or anybody who's talking about geoengineering, said the words sulfur dioxide. This is not even part of the discussion. If you're into chemtrails, if you're into geoengineering, if you've ever heard Redacted, Alex Jones, any one of these, clickbait, fear porn pushing, channels, they have never mentioned sulfur one time. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jim at climateviewer.com. Show me the links. You're not going to find it. It's only been on climateviewer.com. This is geoengineering. Sulfur dioxide, stratospheric sulfur injection. Should they make an example out of Luke Eisman and Andrew Song from Make Sunsets? Sure, why not? But here's the irony of all this. Make Sunsets has been as transparent as you can be when it comes to geoengineering. I'm not saying they're good people. I think they're, basically fleecing people, saying, send me your money, we'll throw balloons in the planet, and we'll virtue signal for you by throwing some sulfur into the stratosphere. Here's the rub. Here's the elephant in the room, or the elephant in the sky. While everybody's talking about planes making clouds and saying, well, it's aluminum, it's barium, it's all these things, what they never mention is sulfur. When Make Sunsets throws balloons into the sky, we're talking about a couple grams of sulfur per balloon. In one of their latest tweets at Make Sunsets on Twitter, they're literally showing, hey, we're throwing 6 balloons into the sky today for a total of 22 pounds of sulfur dioxide. Irony. The EPA under the Clean Air Act and Lee Zeldin is saying they're polluting the air we breathe with 22 pounds of sulfur dioxide. Right now, flying over your head every single year, 45 million flights per year, putting roughly, this is a rough estimate, about anywhere from 20 to 80 million pounds of sulfur into the stratosphere every year. So you tell me, am I the crazy one for going, maybe you, Lee Zeldin, who's in charge of the Clean Air Act, should not allow planes to have jet fuel at 3,000 parts per million sulfur, which is reaching 60,000 feet into the stratosphere, while you make an example out of 2 yahoos from Silicon Valley, which is probably, at this point, a good thing. I mean, let's face it. We want weather modification ban. We want geoengineering ban. But if you ignore the airline industry, it's Occam's razor, people. The simplest answer, the simplest explanation is probably the truest one. And the truest answer to this is planes have been putting multiple millions of pounds of sulfur into the stratosphere, and nobody wants to talk about it. Why? Sulfur's invisible. You can't see it. But instead, everybody wants to complain about the clouds they're making. So in response to that, the attorney general from down in Florida, because right now they're passing laws to basically, let's just say they're passing a geoengineering and weather modification ban right now in Florida. And the attorney general of Florida, he said, and I'm going to pull this up real quick. The free state of Florida is built on sunshine. This activity is exactly what Elena Garcia USA legislation will prevent. Great to see Secretary Zeldin putting a stop to the left's climate agenda and keeping our air and water clean. I hope Noah's next. I agree with you on that. Here's the ironic part. In my response to him, I said, wow, Attorney General of Florida, that's almost the exact same words that were said in 1958 by the city of Palm Springs. And you cannot make this up. In 1958, they said, as you know, our entire economy is dependent upon tourist trade, which is predicated on our bright sunshine and warm climate. Recently, our skies have resembled a mob of exuberant skyriders performing an aerial circus. The contrails are breaking down into a haze and creating a cloud-like appearance in the sky. So this is the problem. Right now, and this is all I've ever heard. And people, you can joke all you want, calling me Jim Lee, the jet fuel guy. But I'm going to point out the elephant in the sky. I'm going to, you guys are so focused on the needle in the haystack, you're ignoring the haystack. We are all searching for secret government programs. We're searching for secret pumps and pipes. But we're not talking about the obvious 45 plus million flights per year creating clouds and the sulfur coming from those planes ending up in the stratosphere. That's geoengineering. Planes making clouds, that's weather modification. And meanwhile, in states, we're banning geoengineering and weather modification like cloud seeding, which I'm for. You can't enforce geoengineering bans on a statewide basis, but that's beside the point. The point I want people to understand about this breaking news that everybody's so excited about is they're picking on the smallest fry. They're picking on two dudes who have a small startup throwing minuscule amounts of sulfur into the sky. And do you think anything will be done about the airline industry?
Well, that's what
go ahead.
Let me ask you about this, because so what you're saying is that sulfur is constantly being dumped into the air, but the cloud. I know that you hate when people hyper focus on the clouds themselves, because what I've gathered from you is that whereas that is the most obvious evidence that a plane had passed overhead, what we can't see that they're leaving behind is 10 times worse. What you can't see, and it's basically this sulfur in the. Is there any sulfur-less fuels out there? And what you're saying about finding the secret government or even pronounced and loud and proud government programs to dim the sun or anything else like that, that's important to take note on too. There is scientific and covert experiments that are being done and we are being screwed with. But as far as other situations that we live under, is there sulfur-less fuels that could be implemented? And what would be the reason for not going to something? Because I know that you don't want air travel to stop. I know that you're not.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. You're not with them.
No, not at all. In fact, and people have tried to say, well, you're sounding like a weffer, Jim. And I'm going, no, you're sounding like somebody who is not grounded in reality. The reality is this. I don't want planes making clouds blocking out the sun. That's where I started in 2013. It's real simple. I don't like planes making clouds. Don't try to be some kind of citizen scientist and, use big words you don't understand. Keep it simple, stupid. Occam's razor. I do not like planes making clouds. And I don't like planes doing stratospheric aerosol injection. That is geoengineering. What aerosols are coming from planes? When you burn jet fuel, not only are you putting aluminum, barium, copper, nickel, lead, all these metals into the stratosphere, the thing nobody's talking about is that since 1991, when Mount Pinatubo erupted, since 1997, when Lawrence Livermore Lab, Edward Teller, Roderick Wood, and Lowell Wood, and Roderick Hyde, their first paper on geoengineering was about mimicking volcanoes by putting sulfur into the stratosphere. People do not understand the word geoengineering, do not understand the history of it, and don't understand that it was all about sulfur. You can literally put geoengineering stratospheric aerosol injection on one hand: sulfur, aluminum, calcium, titanium, and diamond dust. That's it. They're not talking about, and if you read 3,000 geoengineering papers, you're going to come up with those 5 chemicals. 5. And only one is even being talked about: aluminum. Not calcium, not sulfur, the number 1. And certainly not the fact that if you look at the balance, if you go try to look it up yourself, it's like hidden. I tried to find a number today, like right before the show, just a rough estimate of how much sulfuric acid. Oh, by the way, when sulfur dioxide comes out and it mixes with water, SO2 plus H2O equals H2SO4. That's sulfuric acid. Acid rain, babies. Like, bro, this was something that I was taught all through,
1991. I got this in kindergarten.
Yeah.
I got this in kindergarten.
From kindergarten through 5th grade, middle school, high school, and then it magically disappeared. We don't talk about acid rain anymore. But who's making the acid rain? Planes. How many planes? 100,000 flights a day. How many a year? Over 45 million. Flights a year.
So again, I know you're not one of these crazy lefties who wants to go and throw tomato soup at the Mona Lisa because people are using planes and all that shit. But what would be a serious cause for somebody in Lee Zeldin's position to take up to clean up just general air flights?
Right now, they can do contrail avoidance. It's already being discussed. Hell, even Bill Gates has contrails.org, contrail plural, contrails.org, where they're saying the quiet part out loud that I've been telling people for almost 20 years now. They want to make less warming, more cooling contrails. That's weather modification and geoengineering all in one. Let's control how planes make clouds by where they route them in the sky. But the part that they never talk about, they only say it rarely, and David Key said it very proudly, when make sunsets through balloons in the sky off of Baja Sur, California, they floated over Mexico, and the entire country of Mexico banned geoengineering. So let this be a lesson to the states that are currently banning geoengineering. What can Mexico do about planes geoengineering? Nothing. Are they going to throw burritos at the planes? They can't do anything about it. Geoengineering is a global problem. And I don't want global government. I freaking hate the United Nations, but let's be real. Unless our federal government says geoengineering is illegal, it would be a violation of the Environmental Modification Treaty, the Weather Warfare Ban of 1976. Anybody that geoengineers, you're going to be affecting all of our weather in our entire country, and we will consider that an act of war. Anything short of that is just a dog and pony show. And for me, this is one of the rare times where you're going to hear me and Dane Wigington saying the exact same thing. Dane Wigington, just a little while ago, is the head of the U.S. EPA, Lee Zeldin, actually claiming to be legitimately investigating decades-long intentional covert climate engineering operations by targeting 2 Silicon Valley clowns, a tiny startup called Make Sunsets, that have launched a very limited amount of balloons from locations in Baja California and Nevada, each balloon with less than 10 grams of sulfur dioxide attached? Is this Lee Zeldin's idea of a joke? or a pathetically transparent attempt to distract the public from the global climate engineering Manhattan Project that continues to rage in our skies and wreak havoc with the weather all over the world.
See, you know what? I'm glad. Jim Lee, Dane Wigington, I respect you both. I just want you guys to be friends and on the same. I'm glad. It's a uniting thing. This is great.
Hey, it's funny, like at the end of the day, people get real confused about why I focus so much on jet fuel, because there's already Dane. Dane's already focused on the clandestine operations. I acknowledge clandestine operations. In fact, I write more about who those clandestine operations are than even Dane. Love you, brother. But I will tell you by name. It's the CIA. It is literally an Israeli startup called Stardust Labs. You want to read about it? Go to www.climateviewer.news. That's my Substack. Go to connect.climateviewer.com. You can check out weathermodificationhistory.com, climateviewer.com, my maps, and pretty soon, I'm going to be launching chemtrailfacts.com, where we're really going to break down the entire history of this. But at the end of the day, Dane's very focused on the secret government programs. He's looking for the needle in the haystack. He wants to find the people with the pumps and the pipes. I respect that. I'm talking about the 45 million planes every day. I'm not looking for the needle in the haystack, because I know that secret government programs have happened in the past, and it usually takes 20 to 30 years, even 50 years before they admit to them. Like they did when they were spraying zinc cadmium sulfide in 1952. They didn't admit to it till 2008. I don't have that long. So I'm going to focus on the haystack. And if I get rid of the haystack, guess what's left?
The needles.
Only needles.
That's, well, I appreciate that. That's a great way of putting it. And I wish we had more time, but this is a headline that's breaking. And what I'll do is I'll get in touch with you and we'll find a night to talk a little bit more on this, especially if there's updates, because outside of that, there is that. Well, we don't have time to talk about the 4chan thing. And of course
yeah, I'm sure the QAnoners are really big mad right now. That 4chan got hacked. And I didn't tell you this, but if I had to speculate, wouldn't it be funny if there was like some leftoid who was like, I'm going to hack 4chan and I'm going to try to get the IP addresses of who Q was so that I can live, you know what I'm saying? Is because they would have all the server logs.
Is that what is available, possible right now?
Yes. I mean, they got all the server logs for everybody who logged into 4chan.
From what year to what year? At all time?
That part I don't know. I haven't gone digging for the actual leak myself yet. I'm curious to go look through it. You never know what you're going to find when you go digging through leaked files. But yeah, I mean, as far as I understood, 4chan was down, and they had basically gathered all of the user information for any logged in user on 4chan. Dates unknown.
Okay. Well, we have to do a little bit more on this, and also that Russian. Almost like the woodpecker story, the woodpecker revived story. We'll do that soon. Jim Lee, climateviewer.com. You gonna be live anytime soon?
I got too much going on right now. I'm helping, with some state legislations. I'm working with, I can't say, let's just say I'm working with people in high places, and I've been extremely busy helping a lot of people.
Good.
But, hey, there will always be time. I'm working on my studio. It should be done soon. Follow me, connect.climateviewer.com, connect.climateviewer.com, and you'll get an update as soon as the next video comes out. But I always love coming on your show, brother, man. And I'm glad glad you haven't called me in the middle of the night saying my computer died again.
I know. I'm glad too. As of right now, everything's fine. And I've had several OBS updates. At least one Windows update, and I'm just every time I pray an entire rosary every time. But I'm glad that your studio's almost ready. After that, I'm sure you will complete your sex dungeon, and then we will be able to let's go. Then the fun really starts. All right,
you're getting the first invite, baby.
Thanks a lot, Jim. Have a good night, brother.
You too, man.
Take care and happy Easter. Okay, so listen, I want to make sure that we get everybody's thoughts in, then some final something or others. Let's see here. Jay Britz did that over on Quite Frankly Rumble. We said Jay Semo again. We did that one. I just want to make sure we got everybody. And then also on Badlands, where we have been put up in a very cozy way. It's good to have you guys and gals hanging out with us. The added company is really something swell. As far as super chats, we have one on YouTube that is from Cody. It says, interesting take on sleepwalking. I did it for about a week straight. I would go into an extra bedroom we use for storage and move around parts of an old bed frame. It also is the only room without blinds or curtains. Well, is that where you came to every time? Like all of a sudden everything's blocked out and then you just regain consciousness? I'd like to know a little bit more about that, Cody. Email the show, frank@quitefrankly.tv. That would be nice. Senor Polo, or Pollo, on Pilled says, your voice reminds me of growing up in Boston listening to AM radio. Great show. Well, thank you. Thank you. That's a high compliment. We want to bring in a talk radio. I wish we took some more calls. I know that the window was pretty small tonight, but either way, talk radio, that's the feel we want to recreate and expand into the new generation. Shaquille Oatmeal says, great show per usual. Just a donation for your enjoyable integral work, sir. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm going to release the scratching over there. And then we are going to go to something that I'd like to end with tonight. Tomorrow, as you know, I will be live. I'll be live tomorrow night, and I will bring... I'm going to ask Jay Goulnell to come by because it'll be Friday night. It'll be Good Friday. I'll just have a whole mix of stuff that we can do, and we'll just open up the lines and take calls from you. So we can go anywhere and everywhere. And Jay's a guy I can really talk to about anything live, and he's a great co-host. So there's that. But it is Holy Thursday tonight, and it always as a child, it always made me nervous. And always, thought about the Holy Week was always very nerve-wracking to me. And of course, it's very glorious at the end of it because you do a lot of reflecting, especially growing up in Catholic schools and doing the Stations of the Cross, doing a lot of reflecting on the Passion and then the death and the resurrection, and just knowing. It was always about, I was always putting myself in Jesus' shoes or sandals, knowing what's coming. And that's why, Thursday was always nerve-wracking. It's the night before, it's your Last Supper, the agony in the garden, betrayal by friends. And it made me think tonight, as we're getting off here, about that one scene in Passion of the Christ, when Jesus is brought to what we now, if you were following along and you were in the last book club with us and we were reading the Big Fisherman, Herod Antipas, in Herod's palace. He's being, it's this mocking kind of a courtroom situation. And I want to just play this for you because it's like the first 47 seconds. It's a very, very powerful there's a lot of these parts in here, but there's something in particular I wanted to show you. This scene kind of sums up for me where our society is at right now, kind of like drowning in our own self-indulgence. And here in comes Herod, and this is when the interrogation of Jesus starts. And there's a moment here with an Ethiopian slave, where Jesus makes eyes with an Ethiopian slave in the room. That is just it's an incredible moment. I want to leave off with this. Take a right there. So Herod is mocking him, asking him, "You're the one that gives the sight to the blind. You raised people from the dead," and everybody's pretending, fall over, keel over. They're all laughing, and of course, Jesus is just stoic in this moment. Let me see if I can get that moment right there. That moment right there. It's nuts. This character steals the whole scene from me. It's the Ethiopian slave. Like I said, this is the scene there in the palace. And no matter who takes up this story, it's always the same. It's self-indulgent people lacking in humility. You know, you don't need to know it all. Nobody knows it all. We're all ignorant in different ways, but humility is the key. And this character right here steals the whole scene from me. It's the Ethiopian slave, adorned in gold. What a character. And you have Jesus there standing firm, silent, stoic, eyes closed, not playing into the mockery at Herod's palace. And it was the curious gaze of the slave who, in all of their own ignorance, somehow knew and somehow believed without knowing that he was the real deal. And right at that moment of acknowledgement from the slave is when you get that Jesus opening his good eye to meet the eyes of the slave. So powerful, the silent acknowledgement of the only humble heart in the entire room. And then that's when you see the curiosity of the slave turn to belief, and then finally hanging their head in a sort of shame and unworthiness. And I think that we can all relate to the slave in Herod's court at different times in our lives. And I know I know I still do. And I wanted to bring it up tonight because these are the types of things I usually reflect on throughout the week, Holy Week, especially on Holy Thursday. And that's why I love this film. There's so many moments like this in the film, and everybody is cast perfectly. Everybody's directed perfectly. The writing is perfect. And that's where I leave you tonight. I just want to thank Badlands once again. Please like the streams, share, leave thoughtful comments. I'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you to everybody who's watching everywhere. Love you all. Send me emails and messages, and enjoy the rest of the night programming on Badlands, on Rumble, and be good to each other. See you tomorrow night, 7 o'clock.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Think about it though, Tone. So weight loss.
AIDS?
Nobody's got AIDS. I don't want to hear that word here again.
Will you shut up?
No.